PropOrNot is this shady anti-propaganda group, and they're perhaps most known for making a list that a lot of mainstream media outlets picked up on. And the list is of supposed fake news outlets. And what they did that was so slimy and disingenuous is that they put on the list outlets like Alex Jones right alongside outlets like Truth Out and Truth Dig. For those of you that know anything about, these news outlets online, there is no equivalence between the far-right outlets and the so-called far-left outlets. It's just not. The far-left outlets, so-called far-left outlets, are talking about real stories, and they're talking about real corruption. And a lot of these sites talk about war and what's going on with the military-industrial complex. And that stuff is perfectly legitimate, and in fact, it's really what mainstream media should be doing. They should be talking about news and politics from the perspective of what's best for the American people, but they never do that. They give you corporate bullshit, fake neutrality all day long, and sensationalism. So it was just slimy and disingenuous, and it should have sent up red flags in everybody's head when this group was linking so-called far-left groups and outlets with far-right outlets that actually do fake news. Whether it's Alex Jones or whether it's, what's the one that had the... Oh, WorldNet Daily. The one that had ran a serious story as if a demon ran in front of the camera when Obama visited Africa. I'm not kidding about that. So there's actual fake news, and then there's people you're falsely accusing of being fake news because you have a massive pro-establishment bias because you're funded by some shady characters. And that's what PropOrNot is. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Everything is framed from the perspective of the establishment. That's why these two are over my shoulder here, Hillary Clinton and George W. Bush, two wings of the establishment spectrum of politics. You got the neoliberal corporate centrists, warmongers like Hillary Clinton, and then you have the neocon warmongers like George W. Bush. So, PropOrNot, this is their crowd. This is who they're aiming at. Oh, Russian propaganda is tanking the election, so let's definitely smear, Abby Martin, and let's smear left-wing journalists who are doing a decent job. And link them with, the Alex Jones and Roger Stone and people like that. So here's how, sometimes they go too far and they show you what they're really all about, and they just lay it out there in too blunt a way that's honestly laughable. That's what this is. So take a look at what they tweeted. As you're reading this, please note that the following are tropes/slurs primarily used by Russian propaganda: neocon, neoliberal, Zionist, corporatist, warmonger, Rothschild, imperialist, and establishment. It's so absurd, I don't to even respond to it. Feels beneath us. Really? We have to... If somebody says you're an establishment politician, the fact that you're using the word establishment, the Russians made you say that and want you to say that, so you could sow discord in America. But what if there really is an establishment politician? And what do we mean by establishment? Let's define stuff. Doing the interests of big money donors at the expense of the people. That's what establishment is. That's what establishment is. So if you're serving Wall Street, if you're serving the military-industrial complex, if you're serving ExxonMobil, doing their bidding over the will of the American people, serving the mega-rich, that's what an establishment politician does. They prefer the status quo over change that the American people prefer according to the polls. But if you even bring up the establishment, you're, quote, using tropes and slurs primarily used by Russian propaganda. I told you this is what they're going to do. Everybody who really gleefully jumped in on the Russia stuff without any nuance or caveat or anything like that, they're going to use this against Bernie Sanders first and foremost in 2020. You bet your ass cheeks they're going to use it against Bernie Sanders. They're going to use the fucking shitty horseshoe theory of the far right and the far left are really the same, and we're going to use the same word, populist, and populist means far right and racist like Steve Bannon, but it also means far left and bigoted against the rich like Bernie Sanders. And they will smear you as being a Kremlin agent, a Russian asset, or at the very least a useful idiot, when in reality these people are useful idiots of the establishment. If not even necessarily useful idiots, they might just be smearing people on purpose, which is what's more likely. Dude, most of these things, most of these terms that they gave us are perfectly legitimate to discuss in terms of political definitions. When we say somebody's a neoconservative, it means they're a very hawkish person on foreign policy. They always prefer war. That's what neoconservative means. Now, are there some fringe circles where people use the term neocon as like a stand-in for Jew, and it's used in like anti-Semitic circles from time to time? Sure, that happens. Same thing with Zionist. Is Zionism a real thing, and is it bad? Yes. Are there some anti-Semitic elements that use the term Zionist as a stand-in for Jew, and they actually hate all Jews? Yes. Both of those things are true. It's true that neocons exist and their policies are terrible, and it's also true that some people use that to overreach and are actually anti-Semitic in the course of using that word. Both of those things are true, but they're trying to make it seem like if you use these terms at all, you're doing Russian propaganda and you're doing the bidding of a hostile foreign power, so don't ever bring these terms up. Well, that's just trying to stifle all dissent from the establishment. And, I said establishment, obviously I'm a Russian asset. Or I'm accurately describing something that exists in the world and has screwed over our country time and time again. And I love, the only one where I somewhat agree with them is the Rothschild one. That seems to be getting closer to Alex Jonesy to me, where it's like, okay, you're being a little too conspiratorial, as if like one family runs everything or whatever. No, that's not true. But the rest of them, I mean, seriously, neocon is a real thing, and their ideology sucks, and they're a problem, and they're hawkish assholes, and we have to fight back against their ideology. Neoliberal, yes, so neoliberal favoring market deregulation. That's a massive problem. That's a massive problem. If somebody's a neoliberal and let's say they're in the Democratic Party, but they're very pro-Wall Street, that's a neoliberal, and that's an accurate descriptor of that person's politics, and we need to fight back against it because that's a bad ideology. Corporatist, yes, that's doing the bidding of the corporations over the bidding of the people. You know, imperialist, yes, that's a real thing. Imperialism is a real thing that exists, and the U.S. is an imperialist nation. We're the sole superpower. And listen, this isn't conjecture. This is a fact. We have 900 military bases around the world that cost $100 billion a year to maintain. We're bombing 8 countries right this second. Of course that's imperialist. So, I mean, we can go on and on here, but bottom line is, PropOrNot is a shady group. They're full of shit, and they're trying to stifle all real debate and discussion in the country by just shutting it down by accusing you of being a Russian asset if you bring up these terms.